Good morning to all the participants and our guests out here. I welcome you all to the second week of this 21 days program. I hope all of you have submitted your assignments. Uh, and let me start. Let us start with the introduction. Dr. Nancy Padra.
So very good afternoon, good morning to everyone. Now today we have got our revered resource person, Professor S.K. Ponda sir, who is from OUAT. And I request our participant, Dr. Diksha Kandpal, who is a participant and is from Lala Lajpatra University of Veterinary and Animal Sciences, Hisar, Haryana. He will introduce our resource person, sir, Professor Ponda sir, who is delivered today's lecture. So I now request Dr. Diksha Kandpal to introduce ourselves. Please, Dr. Kandpal.
Good morning, everyone. Today's guest for the session is Dr. S.K. Panda sir, and before inviting him for the session, I would like to introduce Dr. S.K. Panda sir to the participants. Dr. S.K. Panda is involved in teaching, research, and extension activity of the university since last 26 years. During his professional career, he has guided 32 PG students and 27 PhD students. He has published 160 national and international research articles, 15 popular articles, 2 practical manuals, authored 1 book and 3 book chapters. He has acted as reviewer and member in the editorial board of national and international journals. He has attended more than 95 national and international seminars, conferences, training programs, workshops, and delivered lead papers, oral and poster presentation. Dr. Panda has research areas on wildlife, farm animal, and poultry diseases. He has bagged various awards like Dr. Ganti A. Shastri Award for the Best Article in Pathology published in the Indian Veterinary Journal for the year 1994, Sri Ramlal Agarwal National Award for the Advancement of Indigenous Veterinary Medicine for the year 1996 and 97, Best Teacher Award for the Veterinary Faculty of Odisha University of Agriculture and Technology for the academic year 2008-2009, IAVP Achievement Award 2015 as Best Wildlife Pathologist during Veterinary Pathology Congress 2015, Diplomat in Veterinary Pathology by Indian College of Veterinary Pathologists during Veterinary Pathology Congress 2016, BC Nayak Memorial Lecture Award during Asian Veterinary Pathology Congress 2017, and others. He has organized Veterinary Pathology Congress 2013 at Bhubaneswar and conducted VCI-sponsored CVE trainings on diagnosis and control of bird flu and postmortem examination for government veterinarians. Dr. Panda has participated in several radio and TV interviews for awareness on animal diseases. Dr. Panda is acting in positions like General Secretary, Odisha University of Agriculture and Technology Alumni Association, Treasurer, Indian College of Veterinary Pathologists. He has already served as IAVP Zonal Secretary East Zone. So, with due respect and on behalf of the organizing committee, I invite Dr. S.K. Panda sir to impart his experience and knowledge in the field of wildlife pathology. Thank you.
So thank you, Dr. Kandpal, for your nice introduction. So now I request Professor Panda sir to start sir your lecture, and we are eagerly really waiting for your nice lecture, sir. So we'll be learn a lot from you, sir. Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you all. Thanks to the organizer for inviting me. I welcome all the participants for their joining, for gaining knowledge in the field of veterinary pathology and in the field of veterinary science. Wildlife management, specifically wildlife disease management. We all know that the veterinarians act with a lot of limitations. Whether it is veterinary clinical, wildlife clinical disease diagnosis or laboratory diagnosis, therapeutic approach, surgical approach, or even a postmortem diagnosis. There is a lot of limitations, but veterinarians is to act with all the limitations to find out the opportunities where we can work to have a better disease management in the wildlife. Till now, whatever may be the species, it may be a proboscis, it may be a wild ruminant, or even a wild bird. Whatever may be the animals, whatever may be the conditions, as you all know that animals are maintained in captivity as well as in free living condition. But the limitation, wild animals are not protected. They are not vaccinated. We all know that it is a Herculean task to tranquilize an animal and to go for any type of therapeutic approach, or even also vaccination or collection of samples for diagnosis. A single animal approach is not a big thing in wild animals. We have to approach in such a way so that there will be an impact for the animals in the habitat or in the captivity or in the zoo or in the enclosure. By the way, everybody is having a practice of disease diagnosis in domestic animals with a lot of good opportunities like clinical diagnosis or laboratory diagnosis. But it is very difficult, specifically in captivity as well as in free living conditions for wild animals. But the best we can have approach of a dead animals, specifically when animal dies, because clinical diagnosis are not possible. So postmortem diagnosis having enormous significance, followed by histopathological diagnosis and laboratory confirmation of the disease. That is very, very important for almost all types of wildlife species. Sometimes it is a beginning in the diagnosis, sometimes it is an end to the diagnosis. When we could not take an image of an animal, specifically when animal was sick, when animal was living, we could not protect the animal because we could not vaccinate the animal. So it is obvious that a message of wisdom from the dead animal to the living animal is the only way of diagnosis, only way of disease management in wildlife. With this background, we have to act more specifically for pathomorphological diagnosis and if possible for further investigation in the laboratory. That is best. So we know that there are wide variety of species, but mostly we emphasize upon elephants distributed almost every part of the country, wild ruminants like deer, sambar, chausinga like that, again also distributed everywhere, whether it is in captivity or free living conditions. And as a national animal like tiger, also equally important for all of us. Besides, we cannot ignore the disease management in wild birds. So with this background, we have to learn, we have to get again an experience. We have to apply the knowledge of domestic animals in the wild animals. That is the most important aspect. Whatever knowledge we have gained is to be applied, taking into consideration of the anatomic and physiological peculiarities of each and individual wildlife species. Otherwise, it is not so much different from that of domestic animals. So now I am sharing the screen. Is it coming? Is it visible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay. So elephant population is always a task for all of us. As far as the disease diagnosis is concerned, as far as the disease management is concerned, this Elephantidae, Proboscidea, and mostly the Asian elephants, they enjoy a special status in India, very high level of attention and affection from its people, remained an integral part of the social, cultural, religious, and economic life of people. And again, India is very important because it accounts for over 50% of Asian elephant population. We all know that there is various forms of stress, whether it is habitat, deforestation, loss of habitat, or even atmospheric or water pollution, or human-animal conflict, or even also any direct and indirect contact with the domestic animals. Expanding human population has put tremendous pressure. International Union for Conservation of Nature therefore placed Asian elephant in the endangered list. In India, it is a very sorry affair that every day one elephant is dying. The government of India has also placed the elephant in Schedule 1 of the Wildlife Protection Act 1972. There is a Directorate of Project Elephant in 1992 for undertaking special tasks for conservation. But still then, India is fast turning into a graveyard for elephants with around 300 zoos dying every year. Almost one elephant per day. More and more death cases. And as we all know that poaching accidents, electrocution have outnumbered. But diseases are again also equally important. We have to find out because whether we are able to do something when animal was sick, when animal was diseased, when animal was critically ill, but if we are not able to do anything, at least we should monitor. There should be a good surveillance of the disease in animals that will help to save the other sick or living animals. So there is a need of effective disease and health management. But still then, though there are a lot of limitations what I described, but still in zoos, of course today elephants are not being kept in zoos. Whatever elephants are rescued, they are kept and they are vaccinated against FMD, tetanus, rabies, BQ and anthrax as per Central Zoo Authority of India. Again also, we all have agreed, we all have realized that importance of postmortem is very important with all the limitations. Whenever we are not able to do anything, but at least a carcass is to be exposed, a carcass to be examined, a carcass is to be exploited. That is best. But still then there is a limitation in examining a carcass. It is not detected in time. Postmortem is not conducted timely. Even completion is difficult. Even also sometimes postmortem may not be by an expert hand. As we all know that sometimes a veterinarian looks for a postmortem for the first time and even it may be the last also. So with a lot of limitations, animals are not detected. Dead animals are not detected. We are getting dead, but it is putrefied. A putrefied carcass is having a lot of limitations for postmortem diagnosis, though there is a lot of opportunities for postmortem examination. We have to take care. We are getting the carcasses with such a precarious condition where cause of the death could not be ascertained. Maggoted, putrefied, mutilated, liquefied organs. But again, this is the best diagnosis. We have to take care of dead animals. We have to be very prompt to detect the dead animal. We have to act promptly so that at least the investigation of a dead animal is the best. A pathoanatomical diagnosis, organ-based diagnosis, most involved organ diagnosis is still having the highest significance in wildlife disease diagnosis because there is a lot of limitation in clinical diagnosis. Anatomic peculiarities, physiological peculiarities are important. We should know as a veterinarian. It has some similarity with equines. It is a simple stomach animal. Asian elephant male around 4,000 kg, female is 2,700 kg. It requires roughly about 5% of its body weight. They consume up to 150 kg. As they are mega herbivores, they are both grazers and browsers. They drink at least once a day, are never far from a permanent source of fresh water. They need 80 to 200 liters of water a day. At times they scrap the soil for clay or minerals. Adult females and calves move about together as groups while adult males disperse from their mothers upon reaching adolescence. Bull elephants are solitary and form temporary bachelor groups. So this is a dead elephant. Animal cannot sustain a sternal recumbency for more than 20 minutes. This is a sleeping elephant in a lateral recumbency. So we also know that we should not approach an animal which is in lateral recumbency. But if one animal is in sternal recumbency, we should think of that, perhaps it may be a dead animal. Due to the shape of the thoracic cavity and a large bulk of the digestive tract, elephants can only remain in sternal recumbency for 15 to 20 minutes. Pressure on the abdomen exerts visceral pressure forward and prevents the diaphragm from effectively participating in respiration, and elephants lack an effective pleural space that allows long movement in that position. The elephant is the only mammal whose pleural space is obliterated. So this is the temporal gland. So the temporal gland is having also significance in disease diagnosis. Heavily discharging temporal glands may be indicative of severe antemortal stress, but also during must there will be also be discharge of temporal glands. So these anatomic and physiological peculiarity are important. The proboscis is a muscular structure, the trunk. The tusks peculiar to males are nothing but modified incisors. In female, the rudimentary tusks are tusses. The abdomen normally contains 1 to 3 liters of straw-colored fluid. It is extremely important to study the contents of the stomach. Even also in dry periods, elephant ingest quantities of mud in their quest for moisture. The gallbladder is absent. Testes are present inside the abdominal cavity. Kidneys are lobulated, located on either side of the spine at the lowest level of the rib cage, because the examination of testes, kidneys, are very, very important. And you can imagine here the position of the kidney here. Many times during postmortem examination, very difficult to locate the kidney. So we can see this place where we can collect the kidney from inside. But with this background of anatomic and physiological peculiarity, importance of the species, there are wide variety of infectious and non-infectious disease conditions cause mortality in elephants. Common bacterial diseases like anthrax, pasteurellosis, tuberculosis, coli bacillosis, salmonella, tetanus, BQ, enterotoxemia are reported in elephants. Anthrax causes significant mortality. It is always extremely important to collect a blood smear and examine this before the carcass is skinned and opened. Viral diseases like FMD, rabies, elephant pox, herpes virus infection, blue tongue, encephalomyelitis, coryza-like syndrome are also reported. Parasitic diseases, nematodes, trematodes, fasciola, trypanosoma, Cobaldia elephantis are very, very commonly encountered parasites. Systemic affections with infectious and non-infectious etiology are very commonly encountered. Infection of the GI tract. Liver diseases like hydatid cyst, fasciola, cholelithiasis, cholangitis are common. Food diseases are very common in captive elephants. Causes are chronically wet and dirty condition, inadequate exercise. Foreign body's entrapment of large object in the back of pharynx, intestinal blockage, volvulus intersubsection choke in esophagus can cause mortality in elephant. Pneumonia, tracheitis, bronchitis, pharyngitis, nephritis, dermatitis, metritis, anemia, and they are reported. Sudden death syndrome or broken heart as a result of great fear. Discharge of sympathetic nerve which would lead to ventricular fibrillation and vasoconstriction leading to death. So this is also very important in trauma, injury, wounds, fracture. A fractured animal, a lame animal also will die. The postmortem technique should be adopted as it is just like in horse. The most important is we have to measure. Body measurement in wild animal is a must. We have to measure the height. We have to measure the girth. We have to measure the circumference of the foot pad and age of the animal. Many times age of the animals are not reported. So we can take the help of relationship based on the equations derived from a captive elephants that have been suitably corrected or wild elephants. In male and female, we can make the height in centimeter. As age advances, we can take this chart to consider the age of the animal. But after 25 to 30 years, you can see ear fold begins. It is clearly visible by about age of 30 years. Then fold progresses 30 to 40 years, then 40 to 50 years, then more than 50 years, you can see the ear fold flattens and completely beyond 50 years. Then even above 50 years, you can see the reddish layer along with the outer side of the corner of the ear. So the height and ear folds can be considered as a parameter for determination of the age. It is not always necessary to deskin the entire animal, which is an arduous task for post-mortem examination. So once it is examined, the external examination is very important. The wound, specifically the foot lesions, interdigital hyperplasia, ulcerated wound because of churning are very, very common. Even pitted sole, foot lesions are very common, specifically in captivity. Split nails, overgrown nails are also there. It was a Cobboldia elephantis. This was my first postmortem in my life. I could be able to see some maggots-like parasites in the stomach. There was a stomach rupture. And afterwards, it was examined by a parasitologist, and it was nothing but a Cobboldia elephantis or a stomach bud. They caused myiasis. The parasitological identification, the larva of Cobboldia elephantis posterior spiracles and two oral hooks are very characteristic of Cobboldia elephantis, which is very common. Later on, I could know that it is very common in elephants. And even though I have seen my past case, but indirectly also I have come across with the 20 animals, elephants deaths because of this through the local veterinarians. This is so common. They cause gastritis, they cause myiasis. They cause even a local veterinarian last year conducted a postmortem and found these warts in the peritoneal cavity. There was a stomach rupture, stomach warts. There was proliferative gastritis, ulceration of the stomach wall, mucosa. It is not that parasite, even also bacteria. That was my first postmortem. A stomach bud before 20 years. This is my last postmortem where even the elephants are dying due to very common disease like Pasturella in a sanctuary 500 kilometers away from here. 7 elephants died within a span of 1 month. And it was examined. 7 elephants died. Out of their 2-3 animals were putrefied before detection. Congestion of the oral mucosa, and we can observe here consolidation of the lungs. Marked consolidation of the lungs, hepatization of the lungs, gray hepatization of the lungs could be observed so clear. And after it, hemorrhagic enteritis, even proliferative enteritis, hemorrhagic enteritis in the mucosa, and all the 7 animals were disposed. Again, it was confirmed not only pathomorphological diagnosis could help to suspect a disease, but metagenomic analysis also confirmed that it was a HS. But people will not be happy how this HS has come to this sanctuary. People, the forest people, public will be happy if you say from where this source of etiology has come. Then after investigation, it was found that inside the forest, inside the sanctuary, there are some animals are kept without any vaccination. An animal died due to HS and thrown without any investigation, and that was the source of infection. So the all domestic populations were strictly directed for vaccination against all the common bacterial and viral diseases, whatever vaccines are available. Because there is a negligence of vaccination in domestic population, which has given rise to the diseases in wild elephants or even also other wildlife populations. So the best way of diagnosis, at the same time best ways of prevention, is control of the diseases with the domestic populations nearby. Even Pasturella, the septicemic lesions I have seen in other animals also, epicardial hemorrhage, hemorrhagic lungs, urinary bladder hemorrhage, demonstration of gram-negative bipolar organisms. Even anthrax field veterinarians are detected in a district where 3 elephants died within a span of 1 day. Very clearly suspected on the basis of discharges from the mouth, from the trunk, from the anus. Even also discharges were there in the outside, which was a clear suggestive of a case of anthrax, and later on it was confirmed on the basis of blood smear examination. So the enzootic areas of anthrax, where the elephants are dying every year, the domestic population should be vaccinated very sincerely. So this is a message of a pathomorphological diagnosis for the control of the disease. Again, a veterinarian was at risk when elephants are now coming to the human habitation, causing a lot of hue and cry, damage to the crops, damage the vehicles, human property. So the veterinarians are forced to tranquilize the animal. But unfortunately, when this animal was tranquilized by the veterinarian, the elephants died during sedation process. So animal was sedated forever. People were shouting, sir, perhaps the veterinarian killed the animal because of overdose of anesthesia. But again, it is not like that. The animal was tranquilized under pressure by the forest people, by the public, when animal was overfed. Animal was overfed, damaged the crops, and have consumed a lot of food. Last night, even also there was wheat pack inside the mouth cavity, and there was a respiratory blockage. So we all know that the animal should not be tranquilized when it is overfed. But there is a lot of limitation for a veterinarian where he could not be stopped. So people were shouting against the veterinarian, perhaps it is overdose of anesthesia, but the pathomorphological diagnosis, the postmortem diagnosis could help. That it is nothing because of a respiratory blockage, because of overfeeding of the animal. You see the abdominal distension of that animal. We can see the impaction of the stomach, dehydrated contents in the stomach. So the condition of the animal, which is such of impaction and dehydration, tranquilized under pressure, an animal succumbed to death. It was not a case of overdose of anesthesia, it was a case of overfeeding and respiratory blockage. Even also, whenever there was a suspicion of overdose of anesthesia, the brain is to be examined, so brain was collected. It is a Herculean task to reach the brain in the cranial cavity, but it is to be exposed. Many baby elephants are dying. Many baby elephants are dying after rescue. They are reared, they are fed by hand. But who knows that ill-fated baby elephants will die due to drenching pneumonia or aspiration pneumonia. It was only post-mortem examination could help. That whole lungs parenchyma was filled with foreign materials, food materials. Because of aspiration pneumonia, drenching pneumonia, animal died. So 1, 2, 3 animals died due to aspiration pneumonia wherever it was rescued, anywhere. So it was a learning for everyone, for the veterinarian, for the caretaker, for the forest people, that any baby elephants which are rescued are to be drenched properly. So this is the best message was given to almost all the people after 1 or 2, 3 post-mortem successful examination and conducting or going for a diagnosis. Even histologically aspirated foreign material, degenerative grains, acellular debris, multinucleated giant cell reaction. Necrosis of bronchial mucosa, foreign material, giant cell neutrophils, everything was evident. So now after that, it was so clearly instructed to the caretaker that the baby elephants which are rescued are to be taken care of as far as the drenching is concerned. So there is no further death afterwards because of aspiration pneumonia. So a message of good thing of aspiration pneumonia, though the animals died, but still then they could help to save the other animals. So now rescued elephants are successfully handled, carefully drenched, and they are not dying. So these are successful cases after successful post-mortem diagnosis of the previous 2-3 cases. This is an elephant died. People were having hue and cry. Perhaps it is a bullet injury because there was a swelling. Animal was moving with lameness. But whenever the animal died, it was found that there was nothing. No bullet injury, nothing else. There was edema. And it was known that this baggy pant appearance is characteristic. This baggy pant appearance is characteristic of old age. Both the hind limbs will be swollen like this, and there will be a big temporal fossa. These are characteristic of old age in elephants. So we can determine these parameters to consider that this is an old elephant. Of course, there will be some systemic lesions also, sometimes with this, in addition to these external findings. Even some worms. This is an elephant diet in a sanctuary. A herd is moving. We are on the other side. The elephant and forest officials are waiting for us. The herd is moving. Now herd is moving to right side. They could be able to make our road free. Then we could be able to pass and reach to the spot for postmortem examination. There was a beautiful rainbow after a shower. But unfortunately, we could be able to see a Murray's condition. A baby elephant, it was a mascot of a youth festival. It was such a famous, popular elephant. It was for the first time after rescue, it was put into the herd, but it was an unsuccessful venture that the animal was rejected. Though the animal was totally putrefied, maggoted, the trunk was totally lost. Still then you can see the dislocation and fracture of the ribs, and also the stomach was not empty, full of stomach contents. So the trampling could be correlated because of the fracture, and also even also you see the stomach was totally peeled, so it was not diseased. Animal was taking feed, but it was trampled to death by the herd. It was rejected. Another elephant, it was having some wound, abscesses, but it was healed. It was transported to a good place for better treatment. What animal died, and everybody was asking how this animal died when animal was almost going to be healthy. But simple post-mortem examination, detection of a fresh wound could be able to correlate. You see the cleanness of the peritoneal cavity, nothing, no organs were having any pathological changes. But there was only lungs hemorrhage. There was one side hemorrhage in the thoracic cavity. So hemorrhage in the thoracic cavity and lungs hemorrhage, as we have already discussed, that animal could not sustain a sternal recumbency. Then simply I asked that how this animal was translocated, whether it was tranquilized or not. They simply told that this animal was not tranquilized. So animal struggled a lot while it was transported. A simple wound in the carcass, specifically on the surface of the knee region, could be able to correlate with the disease diagnosis, whatever happened to the internal, specifically the thoracic organ, specifically the lungs and thoracic cavity. So it was a mishandling of an animal during transportation, and which has given rise to the death of the animal. So again, it was a learning that animals should be translocated properly with proper tranquilization, not like that. Again, a lot of infighting injuries due to tusker also happened. But most important is nowadays, as we all know, that human-animal conflict. So animals mostly die due to either intentional poisoning, malicious poisoning, or accidental poisoning, or the pesticide poisoning, whatever it may be, whenever they come to the crop field. And this is a time like specifically November, December, January. It was a new year. This animal died at the hilltop of a Barunei hill. How it is possible that a diseased animal will go climb to the hilltop? It was suspected of poisoning, and we were eager to know the pathological findings of this case. And virtually there was severe hepatitis. You can see the soft friable liver with hemorrhage and congestion. Microscopically also there was massive hemorrhage. And again in kidney, there are all, you can see here in the cortical region, there are linear hemorrhagic spots. Even petechiae was found very clearly on the cortical. So kidney hemorrhage and hepatic lesions. Again, there are also blood cells found in the interstitial areas of the kidney, specifically intertubular space. Even on the epicardial surface hemorrhage, so it was suspected for toxicity. And again, whenever animal come to this type, again another case also it was suspected for toxicity. Animal died on the side of the road, on the side of a national highway. It was transported to a distant place for post-mortem examination. Again, it was very clearly found. You see the mouth lesions, mouth were having hemorrhagic spots, epicardial hemorrhage, hemorrhages on the liver surface, cottages of the liver, revealed hemorrhage, cortical surface of the kidney showing hemorrhagic spots. Class रची कौन कौन दू class रची हाँ तुम टिके गोटे ऑनलाइन ही अछि पर टी कथा हाँ 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 टिके परे टी कथा हाँ कर दो रखी दो then even you see the hemorrhagic gastritis, mucosa is showing hemorrhagic blackish discoloration, ulceration. So the toxicity is going in a very serious way. So the forensic examination, toxicological examination, chemical examination of the stomach contents, intestinal contents are highly required. Sometimes also we could be able to get some unusual chemicals which are not a pesticide or any agrochemicals. So intentional poisoning is also established, but the pathomorphological diagnosis is the very fast to be taken care of to suspect any toxicological diagnosis. Even bullet injury, we can see a wound. There are thorough bullets. Even poaching, electrocution. You can see the electrocution where there is electric wire, there is charring marks on the trunk. Even the tragic train accidents are also very common. So all these are most important as far as elephant population with deaths. But besides, the most important disease now has come up, specifically for the young elephants, like elephant endotheliotropic herpes virus infection, EEHV infection, which is a type of herpes virus which can cause highly fatal hemorrhagic disease when transmitted to young Asian elephants. It is a beta herpes virus, a novel clade most closely related to the mammalian that have been responsible for deaths of both zoo and wild Asian elephants worldwide, especially in young elephants. These are the first species type identified which causes an acute hemorrhagic disease with a very high mortality rate. So we should be very careful. We have also reported 6 cases, 4 cases in zoos. Very clear, consistent lesions of acute hemorrhagic disease. Later on confirmed, you can see here the bluishness of the oral cavity, mesenteric hemorrhage, epicardial hemorrhage, endocardial hemorrhage, splenic hemorrhage, hemorrhagic gastritis, hemorrhagic ulcers. meningeal vessels congestion. One case was detected, suspected for EHB. The second case was taken care of very seriously, but could not save. The animal could not be saved. That elephant also died. You can very clearly see the cyanosis, bluish discoloration of the tongue. Again, the same mesenteric hemorrhage, serosal hemorrhage of the intestine, colon, epicardial hemorrhage, endocardial hemorrhage, cortical surface of the kidney, meningeal vessels congestion. Again, also another case with bluishness, discoloration of the tongue. Same type of lesions. Even it was in a sanctuary. Again, another case we could be able to see in a sanctuary. Same type lesions within a span of 1 month. So there is a heavy death toll due to EHB. It is reported in many parts of the country nowadays. So we all should be very much careful about EHB, how to diagnose promptly, how to take care of these pathomorphological lesions to suspect the disease and for confirmation later on. Even myocardial hemorrhage, inclusion body in the capillary endothelial lining, in the liver also hepatocellular degeneration, and sinusoidal endothelium. Inclusion body, demonstration of inclusion body intranuclear in the sinusoidal endothelium. Again, later on, analysis of blood and tissue samples in RT-PCR assay using 2 different sets of primers and probes targeted terminate gene and measure DNA binding protein gene, followed by CPCR, and sequence was positive for EHB1A in all 4 animals. So you should be very careful. The elephant is a friend to man, and now indeed our turn has come to be the friend of the elephant. So we should be very careful how the veterinarians to take a serious note of each and every elephant death in the whole country, so that the death toll should be reduced, at least due to diseases. If it is diagnosed, if it is monitored, then disease management will be easier. Besides, the most important population distributed throughout the country is wild ruminants. They attract the attention of people because of varying sizes, color, form, agility, behavior, and peculiarities. In their antler, horn, the wild ruminant population in the entire globe consists of around 180 species. Of these, about 31 species of 20 genera are distributed in all types of habitats throughout India. Cervidae means deer having antler, but bovidae, those are having horns. Mostly the antler and horns. Cervidae and bovine are very important. Even besides, there are giraffidae we are to be taken care of. They are very different in their size, smallest being the mouse deer, largest being the giraffe, heaviest being the gaur and wild buffalo, spotted deer. We should deal with these species. Every veterinarian will come across with a clinically diseased animal or even a dead animal of these groups. A swamp deer, a sambar deer, a barking deer, a black buck, a white buck, a chausinga, 400 antelope, a nilgai blue bull, a giraffe. So again, there is a challenge here because there is again limitation in the vaccination of these species, and more important is there is overpopulation in a limited geographical area. There is increased captivity areas for these species, and at the same time there is overpopulation. So when there is overpopulation, there is a limited geographical area, there is a limitation in vaccination. So obviously there will be ill effects of inbreeding, such as stillbirth, congenital anomalies, neonatal mortality, infertility, debility, and increased susceptibility to infectious diseases. These are very common in these wild ruminants. And again, these wild ruminants are very, very common, very, very close to the domestic ruminants. So they are very much common with their domestic counterparts. So we have to take care specifically the diagnosis, though not possible clinically, but again through the pathomorphological diagnosis during postmortem histopathology and followed by laboratory investigation. Whether you get mite infestation in Mithun can give rise to a seriousness of the disease. We can see fasciola, paramphistomesis, monogiasis, hydrogeosis. Fasciola is very common in wild ruminants, as we all know. There is a report of fasciolosis. What I saw we could be able to observe it during postmortem examination. You can see here there are tongue-like structures coming out from the bile duct or from the corteges of the liver. So a clear-cut diagnosis of demonstration of fasciola in the liver could be able to confirm the disease, but in the meantime, 20 deer population, specifically in a deer park, they have died. Then there is a question how it is possible that deer population, specifically in a deer park, will suffer from a fasciola when the deer is not having access with any swampy areas. There is cross-section of the fasciola in the liver of that deer, histologically demonstrated. But they were being given with the fodder, and fodder being collected from the swampy areas where the snails are there. So the life cycle of fasciola through the intermediate host was possible because of this fodder collected from the swampy and the low-lying areas. Even paramphistomes are very common. The rumen flukes, rumen wall, cross-section of the attached parasite on the ruminal mucosa are very common in specifically wild ruminants because they are not dewormed, they are not vaccinated, they are not taken care of any when they are ill, they are clinically or even they are normal. Whether it is clinically affected animal or a normal animal, they are not dewormed, they are not vaccinated. So obviously they are prone to any type of common diseases or with that of their domestic counterparts. Protozoan diseases like Babesia, Trypanosoma, Theileria are also very common. We have experienced a case of theileriosis in a giraffe. It was translocated from Alipur Zoo to Nandankanan Zoo. Alipur Zoo is famous for giraffe, Kolkata. So it was you can see a special cabin was constructed to transport the animal. But after transportation, sudden onset of sickness after 5 days of translocation and succumb to death. Again, it is very clear. We all know that whenever any animal, whether it is domestic or wild, if they are translocated, that becomes a very important predisposing factor for many infectious diseases. This succumb to death within 3 hours after 5 days of sickness. Even blood could not be collected, but postmortem examination could reveal paleness of the conjunctiva, paleness of the oral mucosa. There are icteric subcutaneous abdominal surface, hemorrhagic lymph nodes, enlarged lymph nodes, superficial lymph nodes, congestion and hemorrhagic lungs, petechia on the epicardium, enlarged liver with yellowish discoloration, soft friable kidney, congested spleen, and very characteristic pathognomonic lesions of ulceration of the abomasal mucosa. Abomasal mucosa ulcerated, reddish urine in the urinary bladder. So it was suggestive of theileriosis. Microscopically also there was congestion and hemorrhage in the lungs. You can see the interstitial congestion and hemorrhage, interalveolar space, interstitial exudation in the alveoli, interstitial congestion in the kidney, lymph node showing hemorrhages, abomasum showing ulceration, mucosal sloughing, and even after death, whatever blood was collected during death, also pyroplasms were demonstrated. After the death, the blood was examined. Even it was examined with fluorescent microscope, FAT. Again, also gel electrophoresis of the product 720 base pair amplified with the primer. Theileria annulata merozoite specific antigens. Gene. So it was again reported that 5 young and adult giraffe from different geographical in South Africa, including 2 translocated giraffes, showed sudden onset of disease and subsequently died. So there are reports of sudden death due to theileriosis after translocation. So it was a learning how to be taken care of. So this giraffe joy has given a message of joy to the other living giraffe. FMD is very common, well recognized. A single FMD, a lame animal will die. It cannot be treated properly. It cannot be handled critically examined. So the FMD in many deer population, even there was in outbreak form, it was reported. TB is very common. There is no Jew in a country which is free from this malady. And very easy to diagnose during postmortem and very difficult to diagnose antemortem. Tuberculosis lesions, KGS nodules in the lungs. Even also, there are nodular lesions in the mesentery. Even also in many species, sambar, deer, everywhere, the KGS nodules, coalescing nodules throughout the parenchyma of the lungs. Granulomatous inflammation and necrotic debris in the alveoli histologically demonstrated, comprising caseous necrosis, mononuclear cells, mild fibrosis, Langerhans type of giant cells, demonstration of acid-fast bacilli, even PCR amplification. Even anthrax is also very important. Lot of Jews have reported anthrax. Pastorella is very common nowadays, as these species are not protected by vaccination, and domestic population is always prone to that disease. So there are a lot of Pastorella cases we have seen. Epicardial hemorrhage, hemorrhagic tracheitis, acute pneumonia, hemorrhagic lungs, and more important, hemorrhagic enteritis. Very, very specific lesions to be suspected. Proteexudates in the trachea. Even in nilgai also we have seen this. Epicardial hemorrhage, endocardial hemorrhage, proteexudates in trachea, pneumonia, hemorrhagic tracheitis. Again, exudates, presence of serofibrinous exudates in the alveoli histologically, inflammatory cells, alveolar necrosis, desquamation of the bronchial mucosa, exudation in the bronchial lumen, exudation, desquamation of the bronchial lumen, subpleural hemorrhage, edema, alveolar hemorrhage, and again also congestion hemorrhage and cellular infiltration at interalveolar space. So the massive pathological lesions in the lungs, even alveolar necrosis, sometimes union of alveoli forming bullae, congestion hemorrhage and infiltration of macrophages, neutrophils at the interalveolar space. These are some of the pathological changes also we can see. So the mnemonic changes with the presence of myocardial congestion and edema, liver showing some congestion and hemorrhage at the sinusoidal space, demonstration of gram-negative bipolar organisms are always to be taken care of for this common bacterial disease in case of these wild ruminants. Again, BQ is a threat to this population. We have seen a lot of nilgai diet with all muscle hemorrhage. This is the best. The disease can be diagnosed at the subcutaneous region. Shoulder and cervical region muscles showing massive hemorrhage. Epicardial hemorrhage, petechiae on the epicardium. Endocardial hemorrhage. Even proteexudates in the trachea. Sometimes also there may be mixed infection of Pastorella and BQ, HS, BQ both can come together. Demonstration of gram-positive spore-forming subterminal spores, the bacilli, and again, these are very common and not so easy to remove the bacteria from the heart, from the plaque, from the area, from the soil. It was advised to remove the topsoil. How it is coming specifically every year, just immediately after the first shower, the spores are vegetating on these muddy areas inside the enclosure, which is the source of etiology. So it was suggested that every continuously for 2 to 3 years, immediately after first shower of the monsoon, the animals started dying. And finally, it was suggested to remove the topsoil so that spores will not vegetate further. And all the muddy areas in the enclosure are to be removed. And finally, a sprinkling of lime, removal of the topsoil could help to control the disease. E. coli is a very common infectious condition in ruminants. As you all know that it is mostly, whether it is related to water or related to feed or related to enclosure, but a opportunistic bacteria which is present everywhere, omnipresent bacteria can cause peritonitis, can cause pericarditis, can cause enteritis, can cause gastritis. So several serotypes of E. coli have been isolated in different zoos because of these unhygienicness conditions of the water, feed, or the enclosure, or the floor. But unfortunately, the animals die, which is reflected in the form of peritonitis, adhesion of the organs. So besides, we have experienced many injuries because animals, specifically these horned animals, there is infighting. So there will be horn injury, there will be infighting injury, there will be deep punctured wound to the peritoneal cavity, massive hemorrhage, infighting are also very common in these species. I'm not describing much, as you all know this. Besides that, capture myopathy is very common. We should not chase the deer. It is a condition occurs within a few hours to 4 weeks of capture operation. Infighting, chasing, rutting, etc. when the animals are allowed to overexert themselves. There are reports of capture myopathy among spotted barking mouse deer within 1 to 30 days. Even capture operations, after 30 days also we can get capture myopathy, myocardial degeneration. So animal will die. Translocation. One animal was translocated 500 kilometers without any treatment of any saline or nothing. So animal died due to dehydration. After post-mortem, it was found that this animal was totally dehydrated. Stomach contents were, ruminal contents were dehydrated. So it was suggested that you must go for better management during translocation of any animal. And as we all know that specifically these wild ruminant species are suffering from cirrhosis because of apoptoxicosis, because the feed which is being given are not examined whether there are presence of any mycotoxins or not. So there is a cumulative effect of a low level of aflatoxin on the body, giving rise to jaundice, yellowish discoloration of the whole abdominal cavity, cirrhosis, firmness of the liver, nodular liver, diffuse fibrosis histologically, portal area fibrosis. Even also, many people also are having a notion to give some feed or something to the animals, specifically in the zoos. So they suffer from these foreign body entrapment. We'll get polythene in the stomach. We'll get phytobezoar, trichobezoar. So these are very, very important common cases. So it was suggested that the visitors should be away from these animals so that they cannot throw any polythene to the inside the enclosure, so that they should not suffer from these foreign body entrapment. Even these species are now with 3 wire nets barrier, so that they will not come in contact with any visitors, specifically throwing up a feed or any polythenes or like that. So simply a post-mortem diagnosis is able to give a message to the authority that how these animals could be saved because of many infectious or non-infectious diseases. So lastly, I'll take 5 minutes. Is it okay if I take another 5 to 10 minutes?
No issues. Please continue.
So besides these 2 important 3 species, we are dealing with an animal which is a national animal. People are worried. They are the largest tiger of the wild cats and were historically found throughout much of Asia. And the Bengal tiger is the most numerous subspecies of tiger and is found in the Indian subcontinent. They are solitary. So please remember, one tiger is sufficient, which determine the ecology of the forest, ecology of the sanctuary. They are solitary, have large home ranges, performing the role of umbrella species, providing space for a variety of other species to flourish. This is the beauty of this animal. They prevent overgrazing by limiting herbivore numbers and maintaining ecological integrity. So on one side, herbivores, they don't give chance of overgrazing, there's overpopulation of herbivores. The tiger is known as an indicator of a healthy ecosystem. It is an apex predator. Presence of viable population of wild tiger is thus an indicator of the integrity, sustainability, and health of habitats they occupy. In India, the tigers are maintained for their scientific, economic, aesthetic, cultural, and ecological values, and to preserve for all time areas of biological importance as a national heritage for the benefit, education, and enjoyment of the people. India is home to more than half of the world's tiger population. Their numbers have sunk from 5,000, 7,000 in 1990s, when their habitat was more than twice. But in 2006, they were in 1,411 tigers. Now it has increased to 1,700 in 2010, 2,900 or 3,000 in 2018. On the occasion of International Tiger Day, Prime Minister Narendra Modi released the results of the fourth cycle of All India Tiger Estimation. The Prime Minister said that with almost 3,000 tigers, India is today among the biggest and most secure habitats. So Prime Minister expressed his happiness that though there was a decline in the 90s, but now India is best a secure habitat for having 3,000 tigers throughout. 50 tiger reserves in India. Project Tiger is there, a project. Tigers are the endangered species. They are Scheduled 1. As per CZI inventory of animals record, 349 tigers housed in 50 Indian zoos also, besides the pre-habitation. Recent evidence indicates that disease to be a new emerging threat to tigers. It is not that tigers are not suffering from diseases. Disease management mostly depends upon early detection of the sick animal, but very peculiar that non-domestic felids like tiger, they hide signs of illness. So that is very peculiar. Even you will be surprised to know whenever you see a dead animal through postmortem, you will be surprised that how this animal was surviving up to this much of pathology. So they hide signs of illness. Any change in appetite, urination, defecation, general behavior should be documented, because when they hide clinical signs, so these are very important to take care that yes, it is a sick animal. Changes in urine, dehydration can be assessed by a visual examination, by the mucous membrane or a dry hair coat. Antemortem investigation is very limited. We cannot touch. There are reports of spectrum of diseases in a tiger. Co-mortality is also very common. Adults, specifically 3 to 10 years, are most vulnerable age class with intraspecific aggression. Lot of wound, constipation, anorexia, diarrhea, lameness, inflammatory swelling, jaundice, nasal fistula. Lot of systemic conditions are reported in tiger. But the most important infectious condition, we should be careful, that is canine distemper. Now, National Tiger Conservation Authority decided to test every tiger carcass to find a canine distemper virus. So we have to collect the sample from each and every tiger, whether it is a case of canine distemper or not, and to send it to IVRI for examination. Besides, there are a lot of parasites like Toxocara, Capillaria, Trypanosoma babesia, Isospora are the leading causes. Feline cytomegalosis is an emerging fatal tick-borne disease. Feline AIDS virus. But most important out of all is feline panleukopenia. We all know feline panleukopenia is a counterpart of parvovirus infection. There are also bacterial diseases like anthrax, Pasteurella, Salmonella, E. coli, TB, Navalil, Clostridia and Corynebacterium infections are also to be considered. There are reports of tumor, kidney diseases. As we all know that there are carnivores. They mostly suffer from gastritis and nephritis because of high proteinous diet. That is to be taken care of. And feline panleukopenia is the most important viral disease. We have noticed many instances. Very acute, for acute conditions, many zoos have already reported this. I'm not going in detail. Simply, we can see, just you consider a parvovirus infection in a duck, a similar disease, a muscle pale, liver is pale, kidneys pale because of severe hemorrhagic enteritis, chocolate bloody contents in the intestine. And even also, animals are off-feed. There will be vomiting, there will be diarrhea, even there will be leftover chicken, which that means animals are off-feed, diarrhea, vomiting, and there is a beautiful hemorrhagic gastritis, thickened wall with bloody contents in the stomach. Even intranuclear inclusion body found in the intestinal impression smears. Intranuclear inclusion body, heart showing congestion, myocardial congestion, liver showing vascular degeneration, specifically sloughing or ulceration of the mucosal wall of the intestine. Intranuclear inclusion body, we can demonstrate intranuclear inclusion body in the intestinal epithelial lining cells. Tissue samples can be subjected for fluorescent antibody technique. we can demonstrate lymph node smear, spleen tissue smear, fecal sample under FAT, so that we can also show this feline panleukopenia virus. And nowadays, all these tick-borne diseases are coming up very seriously, where the animals are showing jaundice, weakness, anemia, ascites, hepatitis. A lot of cases, even jaundiceness, yellowish discoloration, jaundice, ascites, and all are mostly related to Babesia, cytogenosis, thumbnail opacity in the tribes also very common, old age posterior paralysis, severe laceration of the, because they are aggressive animals, so there will be all injury many times, infighting injury, and mostly there will be hepatic tumor. Hepatocellular carcinoma is very common, specifically in old tigers. Hepatocellular carcinoma, hepatic tumors, infiltration of the tumor cells in the liver, showing hepatocellular cancer very common. And lastly, it is a very well-known fact that there is a rejection of the tiger cubs by the mother. So whenever the tiger cubs are burned, they should be very carefully examined under CCTV, so that there should not be any trampling by its own mother. So nowadays, always they are under surveillance after the newborn calves to be always taken care of, so that there should not be mother rejection or trampling. Because many instances we have seen that these tiger cubs died because of the mother's rejection and trampled to death. Besides that, wild birds are very important. I'm not going in detail, but I just say that whatever common disease like in birds, like E. coli infection, because in these circumstances, the birds are maintained in the aviary where water is infected, the enclosure may not be disinfected properly, so they can give rise to hemorrhagic enteritis, a severe E. coli infection, or even peritonitis, salpingitis. This is the water which is totally infected, dirty, so that there is chance of all type of waterborne infection, mostly E. coli infection, and even you can see pericarditis, perihepatitis, what we see in case of normal birds, chicken, the similar type of egg-bound condition, perihepatitis, pericarditis, enteritis, hemorrhagic enteritis, even gout, sometimes, even also sometimes worms, also tapeworms are very common nowadays in pigeons, in wild birds. Tapeworms are very, very common, and it is known after post-mortem examination, so that the best diagnosis depends upon the best exposure, and so that best treatment is possible by the best PM diagnosis. Even lastly, the common infection like Pasteurella also is there in aviary birds, can be demonstrated, the organisms, and we can go for very, very important, any septicemic lesions can be examined. Septicemic lesions in birds like patchy appearance of the liver, epicardial hemorrhage, and even other changes to be taken care of. So E. coli, Pasteurella, infectious conditions are to be diagnosed, and some parasites, specifically the tapeworms, are to be taken care of, so that at least these aviary birds can be saved properly. We can have a diagnosis. So in this way, the whole spectrum of wildlife species are to be taken care of on the basis of our knowledge of domestic animals, with little application, with its own anatomic and physiological peculiarities. And the best is the pathomorphological diagnosis, which is the golden standard method of diagnosis till today. So animals should not be thrown without a post-mortem. And besides, we can go for further investigation through histopathology and molecular confirmation. So with this, I thank everyone how we can take care of these wildlife species very promptly with our knowledge. That is most important. How we can impress the people, how we can impress the public, how we can impress the forest officers, how we can satisfy ourselves that yes, I have investigated this case, I could be able to detect the disease, I could be able to detect the systemic condition, I could be able to detect the special disease condition through laboratory confirmation, so that people will be happy once you say, yes, this is the etiology, this is the source of etiology, this is the predisposing factor. Then only we can be able to say, yes, we are having a control over the disease management, we are having a very control over the disease diagnosis. Yes, as a veterinarian, we can have an access with all types of features, so that the therapeutic approach is required only on the basis of diagnosis. So all approach is not a single. So this type of diagnosis will be helpful for the whole herd, whole flock, whole group of the animals. So a single diagnosis can help to a mass, to a group. So I hope that we can apply as a tool through these pathomorphological diagnostic methods for future diagnosis and future health and disease management in wild animals. Thank you all.
So thank you, sir. So it is the session for question and answer session. Now the participants are requested to interact with our Professor Panda sir. Students can raise their hands or write their question in chat box.
If there are any questions, please ask directly. You can open your mic and ask the question.
So, sir, there are only remarks like Manjula Regon has informed very informative presentation. Dr. Susita Rajkumar told very nice and informative lecture. Mona Lisa told very elaborative and nice presentation. Similar by Siva Kumar and Bibhavori and Ravi Kumar also. So these are all remarks for your nice presentation, sir. So now I request Dr. Bibhu Santosh Behera, who is the participant as well as the research mentor cum doctorate fellow of International University Lusaka, Republic of Zambia. So please unmute and give the vote of thanks to our Professor Panda sir. So please unmute Dr. Bibhu Santosh Behera.
Good morning, sir. This was a nice presentation on pathomorphological disease diagnosis in wildlife. It is audible, sir?
Yes, it is audible.
Okay. Under this, S.K. Panda sir, Professor S.K. Panda sir, said about the conservatory activities for elephant, giraffe, tiger, their vaccination, post-mortem changes, diagnosis measures, disease management, etc. I am heartful, thankful, and grateful to Professor S.K. Panda sir of College of Veterinary Science, OUVT, Bhubaneswar, for his marvelous presentation. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Panda sir, to be with us, sir. I think, and in my opinion, sir, you were one of the leading pathologists in India, particularly in wildlife, sir. Really, we are happy today to have with us, sir. And particularly, you have shared the first day's post-mortem to the remarks of of zoological garden. So, sir, participant, I think they have learned a lot, and I think they all utilize the information what you have presented before us. So, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Stay well, sir. So, participant, please join at 2:30. Okay, now the session is closed. Thank you, sir.